Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, the Nico Saga, if you will, that we've seen play out over the last couple of days. It just seems to get worse and worse for this kid as the days go on. I mean, you go back to Thursday afternoon, Nico's probably sitting there discussing with Tennessee, thinking he's got all the leverage. And you kind of fast forward to where we are Wednesday morning. It turns out Nico's really got no leverage in this situation. And as the reports continue to come out, there's just really no programs that are willing to touch him right now. And I think one of it has to deal with the price tag that he is asking for. But I think secondly, there's a lot of programs that even if they had the capital, the funds, if you will, to go out and land a quarterback like Nico, I just don't think a lot of programs are willing to get in bed with that situation as it sits right now. And I think that kind of begs the question of, all right, what are the next steps? Where does Nico end up playing his college football in 2025 and what needs to happen in order to get there? We talked about this the other day. There's really no winner in this situation, right? Tennessee, you lose your quarterback one heading into 2025. Nico is going to be seemingly in a far worse spot than he ever was at Tennessee. The really only winner, I would argue, is the sport of college football, where this situation has been present over the last couple of years. Now, it hasn't had to do with a player of the magnitude and the eyeballs that Nico commands, but you've seen a lot of players over the last couple of years probably have some people in their ear that tell them, hey, you got some better options out there if you enter your name into the transfer portal. And it kind of turns out, the options really aren't there. With this storyline kind of becoming the national media headline it is, I think it is probably a cautionary tale to a lot of other players that maybe are considering entering in the transfer portal themselves to say, hey, I got to do my diligence before I decide to enter my name, because it doesn't, in fact, the majority of the time, it doesn't always work out good for these players that enter the transfer portal. And again, this is not me getting on a soapbox and saying the transfer portal is bad for college football, because you've seen the transfer portal benefit a lot of players. We talk about it all the time. Cam Ward, and goes from unrecruited out of high school to probably the number one overall draft pick in the next 2 weeks. The transfer portal can be good in spots, but with the amount of volume that we're seeing players enter, it oftentimes is not good. And so you look at who benefits the most. Maybe it's college football. Maybe this is a storyline that the sport needed to kind of maybe temper all the movement that we've been seeing in the sport. Now, I want to get back to where it goes for Nico, and I want to preface this conversation with, look, I'm sitting here in the basement in Rochester, New York. I am certainly not in Nico's camp. I certainly do not have a extremely insider perspective in terms of what's going on. But as you continue to see this unfold, there are certain things that need to happen for Nico if he's going to wind up in a good situation going into 2025. What are those things and where might he end up? That's the conversation I want to get into before we do. And as always, whether you're a Tennessee fan, whether you're just a college football fan following this, let it fly in the comment section in terms of where you think he ends up playing in 2025. Because at this point, we thought we maybe had a good idea on Saturday. We thought maybe we had a good idea on Sunday, maybe North Carolina, maybe Tulane. I don't know if any. I mean, UCLA seems to be the only team that's really in play at this point. Y'all let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. And project number one for Nico, to me, is you got to fix the image. And I think it probably starts with just changing the representation that you have, because they are clearly not doing you any favors. Now, there are two things that are hurting Nico right now. It's one, the image. There are a lot of programs that, even if they wanted to pay the money for Nico to come take over their offense, they probably don't want to get involved in the situation for a couple of different reasons. Number one, just what just unfolded with Tennessee. But number two, hey, how's your locker room going to react to this? How's your fan base going to react to this? And those are legitimate concerns that college football programs have when they're thinking about taking on a player like Nico. Nico, I think, first needs to start with, hey, how do I fix the image that I've really built up for myself over the last couple of days. Look, I ain't no PR expert. There are probably some steps that you can take place, and it probably just starts with a public apology in terms of how you acted towards Tennessee over the last couple of days. And I think, secondly, a little economics for you. The price tag that you are asking for is a price tag that there is not a program across the country that's willing to play. So even if you do fix your image and you become a little bit more palatable for these coaches to maybe take you in, or these programs to take you in, there is very clear that there's not a program out there that is willing to pay you $4 million to come into their program. What I would say is, here, focus on football. Don't focus on the money. I think that's how you got into this problem in the first place. There's that old saying that really applies to not only the sport of football, but really just life, and that is, focus on getting good at something, and the money's going to follow you. And for Nico, that could not be more obvious for me. You go to a program in 2025 that's a good situation, regardless of how much money you get paid during the 2025 year. You have a really good year. I mean, you could enter the transfer portal in the winter, and I'm sure there will be a lot of programs that would be willing to spend money on you. Or you could just go to the NFL draft and really make the money that you're looking for. But at the end of the day, right now, it starts with, you got to focus. You got to make a football decision over the next couple of weeks. You can't make a money decision. One, it's clear that nobody's going to pay you the money that you are expecting. But I think, secondly, hey, you make a good football decision, you have a successful next 6 months at whatever program you go to, whether that's being a quarterback too and just getting better at the sport, whether that's going to a program and having success in their offense in 2025. The money's going to find you come December. Potential landing spots. This is where it gets really interesting. I mean, I saw some USC fans, and I know that there's a lot of USC fans that don't even want to listen to this, and I don't blame you. I saw a USC fan put on Twitter, "Hey, what if it's just he's willing to come into your program? No NIL deal. Hey, I just made a lot of money over the last 2 years. I don't need money right now, but I want to get coached by Lincoln Riley for the next 6 months and become the best quarterback I can be." That's a situation that makes sense. Whether you start for USC, whether you don't, you spend 6 months with Lincoln Riley with the talent that this kid has, the money's going to find you come December, at least in my opinion. Another really interesting landing spot is Louisville. Like, what Coach Brom has done with quarterbacks low key over the last couple of years has been extremely impressive. He took a guy in Tyler Shuck, who was just kind of a average quarterback in college football, comes and joins Louisville. Going to be a top 100 NFL draft pick. And you look at Louisville, and it's kind of out of the national media picture. If he goes to Louisville, yeah, people will talk about the program a little bit more, but they ain't going to talk about it in October. And so you get to go to a program where you're going to be put in a good offense, in a good spot with a good coach, and Coach Brom, who I have a ton of respect for. But you also get the opportunity to really get the bright lights off your back. Another program is Syracuse. What Fran Brown did with Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord was in some hot water at this time last year, if people remember. And I guess it was in the winter transfer portal window where the reports were coming out that Kyle McCord's father wanted a guaranteed starting spot at Ohio State going into 2024. Obviously, that didn't go well for him. Has to hit the transfer portal. Guess what? He goes to Syracuse. Nobody really talks about Kyle McCord anymore. He goes out, balls out, and that's now going to the NFL. Up here in upstate New York, ain't many people going to be talking about you up in Syracuse, and that could be exactly what Nico needs. There will eventually be a program that is willing to take a flyer on Nico. And it kind of reminds me of the Bear Alexander situation last year. He leaves USC. There is certainly a dark cloud around Bear Alexander. Oregon does their due diligence, brings him into the program, and everything we're hearing out of Eugene is that Bear Alexander's a great teammate and going to be a great football player for the Oregon Ducks in 2025. That could be the situation. To me, it starts with Nico. It starts with Nico, one, fixing the image. Number two, understanding where you are from a market value standpoint, and then making a decision that is based on football and not the money. The money's going to come. But if you go make a really good football decision and you put yourself in a good spot, That's what you should be looking for, at least in my humble opinion, in my basement in Rochester, New York. And I have a feeling from what I've talked to about college football fans across the country, a lot of y'all feel the same. All right. That'll do it. We've talked a lot about the Nico situation. Probably not going to talk about it too much more until we start hearing some programs that are stepping up to the plate. Interested to see what programs those be. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, please let it fly in the comment section in terms of where you think Nico ends up, or hey, where's the best spot for Nico to end up. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.